Okay, we will kick off our Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series media availability for this weekend's 60th annual Coca-Cola 600. And we'll open up with the driver of the number 2 Miller Lite Ford, and that is Brad Keselowski. Brad, obviously, I'm going to start off with a little bit of a different question. Obviously, this is a big weekend of motorsports, but a big weekend for honoring our military. And after every win, you wave the American flag outside your race car. Maybe talk about what this weekend means to you and what this race, the Coca-Cola 600, means to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Ford. Well, first off, thanks everybody who came here today. I know there's a lot of motorsports going on. Appreciate you choosing this race to cover. But, you know, the Coke 600 is a big race in our sport. It's, you know, is it 60 years? Wow. So, you know, not only is it on Memorial Day weekend, which I think means a lot to us and to the sport, you know, going back to the very founders of the sport and most of them being war veterans of some type or having some experience post-World War II. I think the ties to the military run very, very deep, and it's something we're extremely proud to continue to showcase on Memorial Day weekend. But then furthermore, you know, the race being 60 years old, it's become a very prestigious race to win with its own kind of folklore. And so it's, you know, what we would call, to borrow a term from another sport, a major. And I feel like we've been close to winning this race, haven't pulled that off, and certainly would mean a lot to me for both of those reasons if we were able to win this weekend. So coming off you know, last week we didn't quite have the showing we wanted, but the week before that in Kansas was really, really strong, and kind of coming off of that as far as from the season perspective, you know, we have good reason to be enthusiastic, but this race presents a number of really large challenges. I don't think there's any track like this that goes through such a transition from day to night, nor is there a track like this where we run 600 miles. So, you know, the physical toll is very grueling. And the mental toll of trying to have to stay on top of your car and what it needs to be the fastest it can be, and how you need to drive it to be the fastest it can be is a good challenge for us, and one that I certainly enjoy.
Thank you, Brad. If you have a question for Brad, raise your hand, and we'll get a mic to you. Start up front with Greg, go to Jordan, and then David.
Hey, Brad. Greg Engel, Auto Week. And as a veteran, thank you for all the things you do for the veterans.
Thanks, sir.
Your foundation is
Greg.
Outstanding. 2 questions. Do you prefer the oval or the roval, or are they so different that it doesn't really matter?
Is that the 2 questions?
No. I got one more.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But I think I know the answer to the second one now, listening to you. However, someone said last week that NASCAR doesn't need, and a driver, NASCAR doesn't need a 600-mile race. Do you agree with that? So
I'll start with the first question. And forgive me, because I'll probably go really long and I'll forget the second one, so don't be afraid. You know, I think first off, to try to prefer one race over another, I think is a huge mistake for any driver. People always ask me what my favorite track is, and I answer the same thing all the time. It's any track you win at. So I have not won at the Roll, but I was pretty darn close before I wrecked along with most of the field over here in Turn 1 last fall. It would be very special to win it, but I haven't won it. So, you know, I would say that I have an opportunity each and every week to make the track we're at my favorite track, and I don't ever think of it any deeper than that, because I think you can play mind games with yourself if you do. So that's probably not the yes or no, true or false answer you're looking for, but that's my honest approach. Beyond that, what was the second question again? I know it's just 600 miles. We don't need to do anything in sport, but just because you don't need to do something doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. I think it's the right thing to do to run this race as 600 miles and to keep that tradition going. Like I said, it's unique challenges. I think the biggest thing the sport needs is to stay fresh, and this race is a different challenge than anything else we have by a good bit. And I appreciate that so much about this race. I appreciate that, you know, you're going to go through the daytime and you're going to be burning hot, and the car is going to be out of control. And then we're going to transition to nighttime, and the cars are going to be just crazy fast. And you're going to see a lot of great side-by-side action, I think, as we get into the nighttime. I think that's tremendous. So I'm really looking forward to it, to be quite honest, Greg. And that's only possible because of the 600 miles. And then you add some other things. There's naturally some attrition to this race that you don't see in other races, which I'd like. I think that's a big part of the sport. It's a big part of being a race car driver, is managing the systems that make up a car. And with that in mind, having 600 miles to do it means more opportunities for that to go wrong. And I like that about it. But I really like the history of this race in general. And it seems like, for whatever reason, over the last few years, that question keeps coming up more and more and more. And I resist it so much because of how much respect I have for this race that I'd hate to see it ever change.
Good. Jordan over here on the left.
Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. Brad, where do you assess Team Penske's at right now, speed-wise, compared to the Gibbs and SHR cars? It seems like the SHR cars last few weeks have really come on strong.
Well, Jordan, yeah, I think the Stewart-Haas cars, in my opinion, have been really fast all season long. It hasn't come together for them for whatever reason. They know probably better than I do. And I think that, Kyle's been really strong. The 20 car's been pretty good. The 11 car's been pretty good. I feel like we're kind of neck and neck with the Gibbs cars, and every other week it can go either way. I honestly feel like right now the Hendrick cars are the best cars. I feel like they really came on strong over the last 2 or 3 weeks and had some nice updates to their stuff. So I would expect them to be the ones to beat this weekend.
Go to David right next to Jordan.
David Smith with The Athletic. Brad, in 2018, the 10 fastest cars in each race earned top 10 finishes in those races 70% of the time. This year, that top 10 finish rate has increased to 90%. Have you noticed a heightened dependency on pure speed? And if so, how does this impact your team's pre-race planning and planning for the rest of the season, for that matter?
Well, great stats as always, David. Honestly, I did not know that, and I'm a little bit surprised, but I would have thought it was actually a little different. So I can't say I've honestly noticed, the to date more importance of speed. In a lot of ways, I sometimes feel a little bit different. I feel like that the 5th to 10th range is kind of like a lottery ballpark, but it's very interesting to think of it that way. I think, at the very base of the sport, you still have to be fast. There's no way around that. And, whatever rules there are out there, we can try to make it closer, but you're still going to have some cars that are faster than others. And we've had some pretty decent speed with our team, so I can't really complain at all. But, I do notice that when you're in the lead, it's harder to drive away. But you still need to be really fast to make that pass on second place to get to the lead, or the leader to get to there. And so I would say that there's definitely an emphasis on speed. It's probably as hard as it's ever been to pass the leader, but I think it's probably a little bit easier to pass from there on back.
Go to Woody.
Woody came with MRN. Along those same lines, Brad, I know last year we got a chance to see at least a little bit of the drag ducts on the Xfinity cars at Pocono. If you would look ahead for us so we can give us an idea what you think we might expect there on the Cup side.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how well they draft. Obviously the Xfinity cars ran it last year, and that presented its own set of challenges. I'm not really sure what to expect with the Cup cars. It's interesting. I think the guys were telling me that we're not going to be allowed to shift there. I don't know how that's going to play into effect as well. You would think with those long straightaways you'll get a pretty good draft. But then again, without being able to shift, I suspect you'll have a hard time getting launched out of the corner to take advantage of that draft. So I can't really say I have a great feel for it at the moment. We'll go there and race and find out. But it should be a very interesting challenge.
Go to Lee.
LeeSpencerRacingBoys.com. Congratulations on the news.
Thank you. We're very excited.
And, kind of going back to that, what we were just told is that you guys, we weren't told you would not be able to shift. It's just this new package is not going to lean itself towards doing that. So do you have to kind of in your mindset get a whole new strategy when attacking Pocono?
Well, maybe I should clarify that, Lee. We're allowed to shift, but the rules were changed on the transmissions to make it to where you basically can't shift. So, yes, maybe I should have clarified that a little bit. But what was the question again?
Well, how with that in mind, how do you mentally prepare for something that's going to be dramatically different than what you've been accustomed to doing in the past as far as shifting at the triangle?
Well, I'd say probably the first thing is I haven't really thought about Pocono one bit. I try to go 1 week at a time. That way I'm giving the most effort I possibly can for the race that's in front of me. But when we get there, it's just how fast can you learn? How fast can you adapt? That's a big challenge of being a Cup driver. It always has been. As the technology changes, as the rules change, the requirements that your car has to make the fastest lap time possible change in the techniques that you have to input. So I think it's an accepted challenge to being a driver at the Cup level. It's an interesting challenge, I feel like if you look at other sports, the techniques change, and there's always going to be, a quarterback from today is not the same as a quarterback from 20 years ago. But I don't know if they change as fast as they do in motorsports. I mean, shoot, techniques and tactics and all that good stuff only seems to last, 6 months or maybe even less at this level. So I think it's an accepted part of the challenge. And from a mental perspective, you either get on board or you get out. And I appreciate that challenge.
And what was your takeaway from the meeting with Goodyear this morning?
I did not attend.
Go to Dustin.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. A couple things. Brad, when approximately is the due date? And secondly, you detailed what you went through with Scarlett about a month after her birth. Obviously, you can't protect everything from life. But having gone through that experience, how does that weigh on you as you start this new journey with a second child?
I think, Dustin, it definitely weighs on you. Obviously, my wife hasn't been at the racetrack for the last few months, and that's, intentional because, one, the strain on her, and two, because we didn't want a bunch of people asking her about it because of those things that can happen. But I can't really say it's weighed on me other than, just trying to be as supportive as I can of my wife. I mean, the realistic part is that she's doing most of the work. They say we're having a baby, but it's more she's having the baby and I'm cheering, But it's still a great time, and I'm thankful for the blessings I have in my life.
I guess the question is, obviously, with a first-time parent, there's so much excitement and there's so much unknown. You've kind of gone through this process. You've seen great, and you've also seen pretty bad. And I just didn't know how that changes how you go through this approach this time, having that as opposed to the first-time parent.
And you asked banquet week.
Due date.
Yeah, sorry. I guess I don't plan on changing anything. I'm just going to do the best I can to be a responsible, great parent and to show the most amount of love I know how to show, and realize that, it can all be taken away from me at a moment's notice, but hope and believe that it won't. Wish I had a better answer than that.
All right, we're running a little tight.
I hope you get to one day. It'd be good.
Go to Daniel, Mark, Middle, and Reed, and we'll end there.
Daniel McFadden with NBC Sports. First, how did the negotiations go with your daughter on where to place your Martinsville clock? And after that, there will be 3 drivers making their first start in this race this weekend. What's advice you would give them in order to prepare for this race on Sunday?
Well, I think the first one, Daniel, is Mr. Penske has the trophy at the moment, the clock. So mine hasn't came in. And when it comes in, we'll have, we'll continue those negotiations. The second one was around, say it again. Drink lots of water. This race, for whatever reason, just feel like you lose the most amount of weight and you get the most dehydrated from of any race during the year. And it's a very grueling challenge. It's really easy to lose sight of the fact that there's so many laps to go. Don't look at the scoreboard. By the way, that same advice goes for fans and media members alike. Because when you look up at the scoreboard and it's lap 100 and you see there's still 300 to go, that can drag you down a little bit. So don't look at that. And stay hydrated and do the best you can.
Mark
Garrow, PRN. Just going back to Pocono for a second and the rule changes. 3 different corners, 3 different straightaways. Do you see these rules having a bigger impact one place or the other on this racetrack? Is it the front stretch because it's so long? Where do you see the greatest impact coming?
It probably will have a really large impact on turn 3 because it's so long and flat of a corner. And it's the most one groove corner on the track right now. So when you're behind somebody, you're going to lose a lot of pace right there and try to recover it down the front stretch with the way the aerodynamics are. So that will probably be the most challenging part.
Does the front stretch at Pocono actually start like entry of turn 3, and are you guys? People always talk about how long that is, but that's not really where it starts, is it?
Yeah, I mean it starts with wherever you pick up the gas in the center of turn 3, and with that in mind, it's a long one, but I honestly feel like the back stretch there is more important than the front stretch. Being able to keep your run off of turn 1 and make a pass into the tunnel turn seems to be a better position to pass as of late.
Go here in the middle. If you want to raise your hand. Yep.
Brad, obviously, Noah Lewis, TSJ Sports. Heat is obviously going to play a factor into the race, and you elaborated on that a little bit there, but how much will the heat affect the way you guys perform out on the track, especially in a race like a 600-miler?
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a really grueling challenge on the drivers and the race cars. I think when you have these kind of temps that we're expecting this weekend, it's just really hard on all the systems, the engine specifically. And then that heat makes its way inside the car and creates some physical fatigue that makes you mentally tired as well. And I think that challenge runs deep, and there's no challenge like it during the season than this race. You try to come prepared. A lot of that is on the team and how they do the car. But on the driver, you got to stay ahead of this race for sure.
We'll wrap it up with Reed.
Reed Spencer with the NASCAR Wire. Different kind of Pocono question. Doesn't seem like it, but it's been 8 years since you won there on a broken ankle. And I think you went second at the Glen, third at Michigan, and then won again at Bristol. Looking back on that now, do you consider that a watershed moment in your career?
It was big. Was it the biggest moment in my career? No, but it was. There's certain time periods in your life that leave kind of stamps that maybe steer the direction, and that was a big one for me. Not the biggest, but a big one. It really got my team behind me and really got a lot of things going in a positive fashion for Team Penske and my career. And I feel so very fortunate to have had that run. And when you have runs like that, all you think to yourself is, why can't I do that every time? But that's not how it goes. And that streak is one that really helped propel us the next season to believing we could win a championship.
All right, we'll end it there. Thanks so much, Brad. Good luck on Sunday.
All the best, guys.